It's that time of year. Spring is here, and the NBA playoffs are here. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm DJ Hamilton, and welcome to the DJ Sports Show, a place where we discuss sports, share bold opinions, and untold stories that make a difference. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to hit the like and subscribe button. And if you listen on audio platforms, leave a rating and share anybody know who loves sports. On today's episode, with the NBA playoffs just beginning this weekend, as I'm recording this Sunday morning at 12 a.m. Eastern Time, we're going to be discussing what a championship will mean for some of the greatest players currently in the NBA playoffs. As you guys all know, the NBA playoffs are where legends rise. It's where players can elevate their legacy amongst the greats and pantheons of the legends that came before them, or those who showed they succumbed to the pressure. And this year proves no different, as we have a vast array of superstars who are vying to elevate their legacy. From Nikola Jokic of the Denver Nuggets, SGA of the OKC Thunder to becoming the first team to try to go back-to-back since the Warriors in 17 and 18. LeBron James trying to get one last ring for the Lakers. Wemby trying to prove everybody wrong, trying to become one of the youngest teams to ever win a title, especially the year before where they didn't make the playoffs. Tatum and Brown trying to win their second ring as a duo. Spider Mitchell and James Harden trying to win one for Cleveland for the first time in a decade. Jalen Brunson and Cat trying to win one for the New York Knicks and so forth. There are so many guys who can benefit from a championship. So in this episode, we're just going to talk about who has the most to gain from a title. And I kind of separated it into tiers because I feel like each ring has different implications for some of these guys. So without further ado, let's get into it. And my first tier one is Nikola Jokic and Victor Wembanyama. So first I'm going to get to Nikola Jokic. Jokic, we all talk about how great Nikola Jokic is. He's had back-to-back seasons averaging a triple-double. He's had a 6-year peak now where he's had to come first in MVP, winning 3 MVPs, or finishing second MVP voting. He might finish second this year or third this year, but he's been top 3 in MVP voting every single year since this decade has started in the 2020s. He has one championship right now, what he won in 2023. But then again, people kind of criticize that one because he won it against the 8th seed Miami Heat team that was in the play-in that year. And his playoff run that year, he didn't verse any 50-win team, I believe, during that playoff run, or maybe one 50-win team, maybe in the Timberwolves. So it wasn't like it was a dominant 2011 type Dirk type run that he had. So if he were able to do it this year, remember, if his path to championship, he'll have to beat the Wolves this year. They were a pretty good team, especially before the injuries this year. They were another team that was on the cusp of 50 wins, 1 win shy of 50 wins. They'll have to beat the Spurs and the Thunder, 2 60-win teams, and by most people's accounts are the 2 favorites probably to win the NBA championship. And then maybe the Boston Celtics as well, who they might see in the finals, who won over 50 games this season. So if he were to beat those 3 teams to win a title, that would potentially put him in top 10 conversations. I don't think that would put him in my top 10 conversation because I think he needs one more after that. But there could be a real debate on if Jokic, if he wins this championship this year, is he the best center, the second best center of the last 50 years behind Kareem Abdul-Jabbar? Does he pass Hakeem Olajuwon and Shaquille O'Neal? That's what we got to start asking ourselves. Nikola Jokic has broken so many records. He when it's all said and done, he might have the most triple doubles of all time. I think he's second right now behind Russell Westbrook, if he hasn't passed it already. And if he has, then no surprise. But Jokic, what he's able to do on a night in, night out basis, the game plan you have to strategize against him because he's going to adjust to wherever you throw at him like that. He can read a defense like no other big man I've ever seen. He's a supercomputer. And if he wins this title, there's going to be some real conversations had. And if he's over Hakeem Olajuwon and Shaquille O'Neal all time. Because he has done it without a legitimate Hall of Famer throughout his career. As great as Jamal Murray is, and for you Denver fans who may listen to this or anything like that, Jamal Murray, he's a great player, all-star, made the first all-star team this year, best of his career this year. But he has been up and down and inconsistent throughout the course of his career. You know what I'm saying? And I just think Jokic, he's had some good, solid plays around, but he's never had like a guaranteed Hall of Famer he's had to play with throughout his career. Like Hakeem Olajuwon, even though he didn't have to go always the greatest supporting cast, he at least had a Clyde Drexler, who's a top 75 player of all time, you know? And Shaquille O'Neal has had two of the three greatest shooting guards of all time: Kobe Bryant, Dwyane Wade, and even Penny Hardaway was great before the injuries, and he would have been one of the absolute greatest point guards and players of all time before his injuries. So that's why you got to really consider the supporting cast around him. And then you also have to ask, okay, if he loses in the second round or even the first round, because Timberwolves, they have had their number against the Nuggets over the years. Anthony Edwards has proven he could beat Nikola Jokic in the playoffs. If he loses in the first round or say against the Spurs, we got to ask ourselves, okay, as great as Jokic is in the numbers, is he as great as his stats and accolades show? You know what I'm saying? Is he as great as the way the media speaks about him? They speak about him like he's a top 10 player of all time, but you only have one finals appearance to show for it and only two Western Conference finals appearances. Because when you look at the top 10 tier of guys, they have at least 4 or 5 finals appearances, at least 2 titles, and 3, 4, 5 plus conference finals appearances. So if he were to fail to get to conference finals this year, especially with his team being healthy, Jamal Murray's healthy, Aaron Gordon's healthy now, and the cast characters that you have around you, are you really that guy? I mean, he is a top 15 player of all time in my estimation. That's a lock. But when you talk about the top 10, it takes more than just one championship. Everybody that's legitimately in the top 10 conversation has more than one ring. They have at least minimum 2. And I made this statement to my friends the other day that 2 rings, but like guys like Wilt and Hakeem are in that conversation. But Wilt has an exception because he owns like the NBA record book. He's a mythical figure, right? We've like never seen. Hakeem Olajuwon is arguably the greatest defensive player of all time and the most skilled big of all time. So they kind of get exceptions because how extraordinary they are in their abilities as players, despite just having 2 titles. Everybody else from MJ, Bill Russell, LeBron, Bird, Magic, Steph, Tim Duncan, Shaq, Kobe Bryant, you name it. They have 3 or more rings minimum. The bar to get into the top 10 is very, very hard. It's very high. So if Jokic wants to get in that conversation, he has to win a ring this year because the margin for error is getting smaller. The Spurs are getting better. Their young team, they're only going to get better in the future. Same with OKC Thunder. They look like a dynasty for the next 5-6 years. And then you have other teams. Lakers will get better over time once they really start building around Luka Doncic. Mavericks with Cooper Flag, we'll see what they do in the next couple of years. And then you always have Ant-Man as long as he stays in the Western Conference. So it's not going to get easier. So if I'm Jokic, you got to try to get there this year and win it again. Because I think if he loses this year in the second round or first round, there are going to be talks, is he still the best player in the league anymore? Because I think that title that he has right now on the best player of the league mantle, I think now starts slowly slipping down a slippery slope. And we might give it to Wemby or SGA, depending on who wins and comes out of the West. Because if Jokic doesn't win and go to the NBA Finals, it's going to be either the Spurs or the OKC Thunder. So that's the question I just want to ask you guys. If Jokic was to win another title, is he the second best center of the last half century? I think that's an interesting debate that we need to ask ourselves because that means he's over Hakeem Olajuwon and Shaquille O'Neal. I don't know if I'll put him over those guys, even with one more title. I think he needs to win 2 more because how great Hakeem was on both ends for me because I value both ends of the court. And then Shaquille O'Neal was just a dominant force. He won 3 straight titles, the last 3-peat in NBA history. You know how extremely difficult that is to do? And if you go look at Shaq's finals numbers, the dude was different, okay? The dude was unstoppable. So that's one player in my tier 1. I think we got to ask ourselves. And then if he only finished his career with 1 ring, do we have to reevaluate the ring conversation? Because Jokic is so dominant, so great, and he's been durable throughout his whole career. But if he only finishes with 1 ring, do we emphasize rings still as much and value them as much? Because remember, rings are, at the end of the day, they're a team accomplishment. And Jokic, he's had solid teams around him, but not like he's had like powerhouses around him. You know what I'm saying? So that's something we got to reevaluate and look at, especially once his career is over. But we'll see how it eventually all plays out. But the next player I have in my tier 1, I kind of had it originally I had it lower But I think I catapult this to a tier 1 because the next guy I have my tier 1 is Victor Wembanyama. If Wemby wins a title and Defensive Player of the Year this year, which he definitely is going to win Defensive Player of the Year, he might win it unanimously. He has a chance to become the first player to ever do that in NBA history. He'll join Hakeem Olajuwon as the only player to win DPOY and a title in the same season. That would be ludicrous. And, of course, he will be the Finals MVP if the Spurs were to win the title. And remember, he's 22 years old. He is a baby. He has no prior playoff experience, him and his team. This will be unprecedented. We've never seen a team miss the playoffs before and have no playoff experience as a collective group and then go to win the championship. And a lot of people believe in the Spurs. I'm one guy. I think the Spurs have a chance to win a title. We'll see how they react during big moments when they're kind of under pressure, when they're down by 10. Do they rise up to the pressure or do they succumb to the pressure? You know what I'm saying? Do they kind of shrink? He's leading one of the best young cores in the league. And if he were to go on this type of run, if Wembanyama were to bring the Spurs to championship, we're going to be comparing this to Magic Johnson's 1980 title where he filled in for Kareem in Game 6 of the 1980 NBA Finals, where he had that legendary game. We're going to be comparing this to Duncan's early success when he led the Spurs to the title in 1999 in just his second season, or even LeBron's 07 carry job, even though he got swept by the Spurs. What he was able to do at 22 years old in just his fourth year with nobody around him and was able to take that team to the finals, especially after a historic performance against the Pistons that year where he scored 25 straight points. That's the type of company and what the conversation is going to be about if Wemby were to lead the Spurs team to the NBA Finals. He'll be putting his mark around those type of performances, around those legends. And then we will have to ask ourselves, if this 22-year-old freak of nature, 7'4", 6", whatever how tall he is, were to lead this team to a title, then we're talking about legitimate GOAT trajectory. And we could be talking about him as well as the best player in the league. Because I'm sorry, y'all, if Wemby were to win the title this year and have to go through the Denver Nuggets and defeating Nikola Jokic at the peak of his powers, and then that dynasty over there in the OKC Thunder, like how deep they are, and then eventually say he plays the Boston Celtics with Tatum and Brown, we're talking about the best player in the league. I don't care what anyone says. I know like people that say, oh, we should wait before we crown. No, if he were to beat those three teams and root to a title with how young the Spurs team is and inexperienced, he is the best player in the league. And he'll be ahead of schedule. And say they lose in the second round or whatever, okay, yes, they're supposed to pay their pain in lumps. So this year is not really much to lose for him because you could say, oh, the caveat would be, okay, they're inexperienced. They haven't been here before. This year was the year to take some pain and bumps and growing pains. And the next year, they'll have a legitimate chance to win the title. People were looking at them like, oh, okay, now they have some experience. Let's see what they can do. So there's no lose situation for them this year. It's really just a win-win situation. Either way, it's looking up for the Spurs. So Wembanyama, man, I think it's like a tier 1 situation because this is very unprecedented if he's able to do this. Only in his third year in the league. Remember, Michael Jordan didn't win until he was 28 years old in his 7th year in the league. LeBron didn't win until he was in his 9th year in the league and he was 27. This will be way ahead of schedule. Giannis won when he was in his 8th season. He was 26. He won before LeBron and Michael. And we thought Giannis was going to be on that next potential GOAT trajectory. But the Bucks, injuries happened and then they never really built around him correctly. And they traded away guys. Jokic, he won in his 8th year in the league as well. He was 28, 27. So if Wemby were to win this, he's way ahead of schedule, man. And this is a guy who didn't go to college. He's an overseas guy. So this will be a very unprecedented situation. And I'm for it, man. I would love to see something like this. I love this guy and what he brings to the game, his mentality. And I just think it's refreshing what he's brought to the league, especially this year where he's really risen to what we expected of him. He's actually kind of exceeded expectations. Nobody thought the Spurs would be this great this early in his career. Like we thought maybe there'll be a 6 seed, 7 seed, fighting for the playoffs, maybe a first round team. But no, this team has legitimate title aspirations. So salute to Wemby, what he's able to do in elevating this team and taking this game to the next level. So that's my tier one on what a ring would mean for those two guys' legacies, and Jokic and Wemby, because I think it'll do the most for them. Tier two, I have SGA of the OKC Thunder. If he wins this, he becomes the second player, because he's the favorite to win MVP. And if they win again, he's probably going to be the Finals MVP as well. He'll become the third player in NBA history to win back-to-back MVPs and Finals MVPs. He'll join Michael Jordan and LeBron James, two players universally spoken about as the two greatest of all time. That's the type of company he'll be in. And to me, this will elevate him. I know I mentioned it earlier a couple months ago, what a title would mean for SGA, and I said, is he over Dwyane Wade? I think this will firmly put him over Dwyane Wade. Yes, I said it. If SGA were to win the title, Finals MVP, to defeat the Nuggets or the Spurs in North Conference Finals, and then maybe the Celtics in NBA Finals, and he has a dominant showing, he will be, I think he'll be the third greatest shooting guard ever. Maybe over Jerry West, over Dwyane Wade, over James. I think he's over James Harden already for me. He's clearly over Allen Iverson. The efficiency what this guy has, 4 straight seasons averaging 30 or more, shooting over 50% from the field. The first guard to shoot over 55% from the field in NBA history. This will firmly entrench him amongst the 20, 25 greatest players of all time. I want to know if you guys agree, because I think that's true. If he were to accomplish this. If he loses and say they come up short of the title, does that chatter come in and say, okay, well, the OKC Thunder have to trade a piece of somebody? Because remember, they got to pay these guys a lot over the next couple of years with SGA, Chet, and J-Dub. They're going to have to get rid of some guys eventually, especially with that second apron, if they fall short of the title. But if they win the title, it's not going to matter because winning cures all. So that's the narrative that will swing dramatically depending on if they win or not. And the way SGA comes up in the clutch, he led the NBA in clutch points. He is just so effective. There's so many ways he can beat you, going to the rim, the mid-range, and he can hit the three. It's just tough to stop. And I just think he'll get even more respect if he were to go on this one and win the title back-to-back. Because we haven't seen it throughout this whole decade. It's been almost a decade since we've seen a team go back-to-back, since the 17-18 Warriors. So that'll put him into another stratosphere amongst the greats. And he'll be the first player of this generation to get a second ring. Jokic hasn't gotten his yet. Giannis hasn't gotten his second ring yet, or Tatum and Brown. So I think it'll put him in a different conversation when we talk about the greatest players of all time. The next one I have is Jayson Tatum. Jayson Tatum. Sorry, I'm a little under the weather. Jayson Tatum was able to come back from an Achilles injury where nobody saw him coming back at all this year. The odds were stacked against him. The Celtics were playing good, and he said, okay, if we're playing good, let me try to make a comeback. And also, I'm going to put Jaylen Brown in here as well, because the season he had as well, MVP caliber season, where he elevated his game, the best year of his career, and held the fort with Tatum out. Another title for both of those guys will elevate them, I think, into the top 50 players of all time. 2 titles as a duo. Now you're putting yourself into rarefied air, because there have only been very few duos who were able to win multiple titles together. I'm talking about Steph Curry and Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, Shaq and Kobe, LeBron and D Wade. That's the conversation we're talking about here. And there's many others. Magic, Kareem, Bird, McHale. Very few. So that's the type of conversation they'll be getting into if they were to win a title. Multiple titles now as a duo. Consistent deep playoff runs they've had over the years. Multiple conference finals appearances. They've been to 2 NBA finals already. And then potentially a third one this year, because I had them coming out the East. Excuse me. And then if Tatum were to win this title, I was making my list the other day, and I'm thinking, okay, he is, of course, he's not going to pass LeBron, Larry Bird, Julius Erving, Kevin Durant, Kawhi Leonard. But once you get outside that top 5, you can actually make an argument he's maybe 6 to 8 range. I think You have Scottie Pippen around there, Rick Barry. It's starting to get conversation. Tatum has to be in the conversation if he gets that another championship, especially if he wins the Finals MVP. And I think Jaylen Brown, whether you classify him as a shooting guard, small forward, I think he's probably a shooting guard. If he wins another title and Finals MVP, even if he doesn't win another Finals MVP, if he wins another title and helps the Celtics team beat whoever comes out the West, so it's going to be the Thunder, Nuggets, or the Spurs, he's a top 10 shooting guard of all time. And I think they're both top 50 players of all time. So I think that's something we got to really have. And I think if they were to lose and not get to the finals or get to the finals and lose, people are going to start having that conversation with Tatum especially. He's great, but he's not transcendent, that narrative around him. So that's something people always like to say, oh, he can't be face of the league because he's not really, he doesn't really have that aura. He's not as exciting. He's kind of boring. And some people think he's corny or whatever. I've always loved watching Tatum since he was in high school, middle school. I've been watching him and seeing him grow into the player he's become. And I think if he wins this title, him and Brown, you kind of lose that perception of they're not transcendent. These guys simply just win. They just get it done. So I just wanted to mention that. And before we go to the next player, I want to get back to the SGA conversation because when the top 20, 25 players of all time, in that 20 to 25 range, I remember when I did my NBA 75 greatest players of all time. When people look at the top 20, 25 players, we know the top 12 is kind of cemented. We know who those players are. We don't really have to mention them. Top 12 is kind of cemented as of right now in NBA history. But we look at the top 20 to 25 guys in that range. We usually talk about like Charles Barkley, Kevin Garnett, Dirk Nowitzki, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Jerry West, Dwyane Wade, Isaiah Thomas, David Robinson. Maybe he's on like the tail end of that. SGA, if he wins that title, like I said, I think he might trump all those guys. Back-to-back MVPs, back-to-back Finals MVPs. Like, it's a real conversation to have. Dirk Nowitzki's in that conversation as well. I think he trumps all those guys because he'll have more MVPs than Dirk, D. Wade, Isaiah Thomas, and he'll have more titles as the guy over Isaiah Thomas, and he has more MVPs, and he's a better scorer. And he's not like he's a slouch defender either. He's not like a world-beating defender, but he's a decent defender. And he's been doing some historic stuff, and he's more efficient. D. Wade, I think the thing he has over D. Wade is he's a better three-point shooter and the MVP stuff. And back-to-back MVPs, Finals MVPs, like I said, he'll be with Jordan and LeBron. Only two players to ever do that. And I love D. Wade. But that's some different stuff right there. Dirk, he's a better defender than Dirk, and he'll have more MVPs. So I think that's what put him over Dirk. KG is tough because KG is one of the 5 greatest defenders of all time we're talking about. And Giannis, too, he's one of the best defenders of all time. And his production offensively is historic. But I think SGA, he's had more winning if he were to go back-to-back than those two guys. And I know they have a DPOY to their name, so you can make an argument they're still over him. But Kevin Garnett, you could whether you want to say he was the guy or Paul Pierce on that 08 Celtics team, that's up to you. But SGA were able to do it back to back as the guy. I think he's over KG. The only thing you can make argument is the longevity and maybe his defense, but that's really it. In terms of peak, he's over KG. And then Giannis, that's where it's tough because Giannis, his offensive production trumps KG. He's not as great a defender as KG, but he still is one of 3 players that ever won MVP and Defensive Player of the Year in the same season with Michael Jordan and Hakeem Olajuwon. That's a rare fire there. That's really hard to pass. I don't know if I'll put him over Giannis yet because I have Giannis inside my top 20. Giannis is pushing top 15. If he could just get another title or two, Giannis, if he could get 2 more titles, he needs to leave Milwaukee. If he were to get 2 more, he's pushing top 10. But that's a big if. But SGA, I don't know if I'll put him over Giannis yet, so I think he'll be in that 20 to 25 range because Giannis to me is around 18, 19, 20th all time. SGA will be just outside that, but he'll be creeping on him right there. And Jokic, I have around 13, 14th all time. Jokic, I have right behind Steph Curry, Hakeem, and Shaq. So that's an interesting conversation we will have to have, because that I loved doing these lists sometimes just to look at the historical side of the NBA and the game that I love the most. But that's what we have to be looking at. SGA, because people always like to say, okay, he's in my top 10 and this guy's in my top 20. Okay, name your full list. Somebody got to get bumped out. There's like 12 guys in the top 10, 13 guys. So sorry if I sound congested. I'm a little under the weather, but yeah, that's something we have to really reevaluate as an NBA community. There's going to be some real uncomfortable conversations if SGA or Jokic win the title again. Some real uncomfortable conversations are going to be had. And I'm here for it. So, yeah, SGA firmly entrenches himself in the top 2025. And I think he'll pass that group of players, the Isaiahs, the Dirks, the Dwyane Wades. He's already ahead of Barkley, maybe. He's definitely ahead of KG if he wins again. And I love KG. So that's really hard for me to say. Giannis, he'll be creeping on his heels. I think he still needs a little bit more longevity for Giannis. Giannis, I think he's been doing it for like a decade now. He's been a perennial all-defensive All-NBA guy. His offensive production, he's had multiple seasons averaging over 30. That's why I think I give him the edge over KG. KG didn't have the offensive production output that Giannis has had. And Giannis has been a dominant defender throughout his career. And has proven that. And he won as the guy in a historical finals performance. That's why I give Giannis the edge over KG. And that's why I think it's going to take a little bit more work for SGA to pass Giannis, because his offensive production, he's had seasons averaging over 32 like SGA. And he's a better defender than SGA. I think SGA, the only way he could beat him is if he wins way more rings than him. So he'll have to win this year and maybe at least one more to put him over Giannis and have some more longevity. So we'll see how it all plays out, but that's the conversation I wanted to have. Getting back to our players now. All right, the next tier I had, face of the league implications. This is, tier 3. So tier 2 was like the top 20 to 30, 35 conversation with SGA and Tatum and Jaylen Brown, you could argue. He might be in the top 40 to 50 range for those guys, but the next tier is like the face of the league implications. I have Luka Doncic and Anthony Edwards. So Luka first. If Luka wins, I know he's out with the hamstring right now, but they just won yesterday against the Rockets. Game 1 without Kevin Durant. So add some context. They won without Kevin Durant. But if Luka wins, his resume, and he's eligible for the All-NBA award, so he'll be making his 6th All-NBA first team before the age of 28. He's only 27 years old. He's just entering his prime. Hypothetically speaking, if he were to win the finals, MVP, the championship, and he has the second highest playoff scoring average in NBA history behind Michael Jordan, this will validate his style of play in championship basketball. We've never seen it with a heliocentric guy has won a title. James Harden wasn't able to do it. If Luka were able to do it, it validates him. And then all the critics that talk about his defense, that he's not the leader you want on your team, that silences all that. That silences the conditioning critics, the defensive critics, those critiques of him. Excuse me. That's what a championship will mean for his legacy. And I think if he were able to do this, especially for the Lakers, the prestigious honor of playing for the LA Lakers and the history they have had, that'll put him amongst the greatest Lakers of all time and players of all time. And I think he becomes the clear heir to the throne to become face of the league. If you were to win a title in Los Angeles and you go through, who would they play in the second round? It will be the OKC Thunder. And then you see Denver or San Antonio. Yeah. And you win the title, you're the face of the league, my guy. That's all I got to say. You are the face of the league. And he'll have one of the greatest resumes before even entering or finishing his prime in NBA history that we've ever seen in any sport. 6-time NBA first team, he'll be a finals MVP, a title, and he's a playoff riser. And he led the league in scoring this year. The only thing he's probably missing from his resume is MVP at that point. That's the type of company. And I think if he were to win a title with his numbers and his offensive prowess as a player and his IQ for the game, I think if Luka were to win a title, I don't care what any of y'all say. If he were to win a title, he propels himself into the top 30, 35 conversation. With his numbers, and if he were able to finally win one, he propels himself into that top 30 to 35 conversation of players of all time. Because his offensive dominance is something we've rarely seen. So I just want to give Luka his props. He definitely has a chance. I don't know if they're not going to win it this year. We'll see. But you never know what can happen. It all comes down to injuries, attrition, if he's able to come back in time. They just beat the Rockets yesterday as we're recording this on Sunday morning. So we'll see. Now, Anthony Edwards. They just lost to Denver Nuggets yesterday in a close one. But if he were somehow able to elevate this Timberwolves team, if the last 2 years they've gone to the Western Conference Finals back-to-back, they've come so close to the NBA Finals. If they're able to do it again, beat Denver, get past San Antonio, beat OKC, and get to the NBA Finals, or even beat Boston, New York Knicks, whoever comes out the East, he's the face of the league. He'll be 20, he's 24 years old. When we talk about the next faces of the league, we usually always mention the same prospects. It's Wemby, Ant Edwards, Luka Doncic, because those guys are in their primes or not even in their primes yet, and their box office. They have a certain aura to them. If he were to do this, this will be a generational run. You're beating 260-win teams in OKC and San Antonio. And you would beat another 50-win team in Denver that has a Goliath you have to beat in Jokic. That trajectory will propel him and catapult him into a potential top 4 shooting guard of all time, depending on how the rest of his career plays out. If he stays healthy, continues to have more playoff success, more NBAs. But if he were to get this title before his prime and the road he'll have to endure and get through to get it, this puts him in different conversations. This is like a D-Wade 06 run. And he's even a better shooter from the outside than D-Wade. This is an early Kobe title type run. And he's the clear first option on this team. There's no Shaq on this team. There's no type of level of player that he's playing with on a Shaq level. This will elevate him into different kind of conversations. And the aura that he already has, that will put more gasoline onto it. That will put more gasoline onto the fire of the aura that he already has. And I know it sucks he's not going to be eligible to make All-NBA this year. But if he were to make a deep playoff run, this only helps him. And I know this conversation is for the Wolves. They need to get a real point guard. They need a center who's more reliable offensively outside because they don't have that at the center position. But I don't ever doubt Ant-Man. He has proven to us that he can make deep playoff runs time and time again. And he shows up in the big games. So we need to see that from him. And I know he's dealing with the knee pain right now, but he's a tough warrior. And if he were able to do this, this would just elevate his legacy. So that's another guy I want to mention. The next tier I had is like legacies solidifier. So I have Cade Cunningham in this conversation, Donovan Mitchell, LeBron James. I mean, LeBron, this is icing on the cake for him. And then you can mention James Harden. Cade Cunningham, if he were to lead Detroit to a championship, their first in over 20 years since 2004, they were the top seed in the East Conference this year. You had an MVP caliber type season, the best of your career. This will be one of the most surprising modern title runs in NBA history. This will be comparable to the 2004 Pistons and the 2011 Mavericks. You would have a dominant playoff run. You would have to beat the Knicks and potentially the Celtics to get to the finals. and then you would have to defeat the Spurs, the Thunder, or Nuggets in NBA Finals to win the title. If you were to do that and accomplish that, you would establish yourself, in my opinion, as the preeminent lead guard of your generation. Cade Cunningham is 24 years old. He'll be 25 later this year if he's not already. He's not even in the prime of his career. He's a 6'7", stocky, strong guard. High IQ for the game. 3-level scorer. This will put him amongst the Pistons greats. You could potentially argue, if he were to win the title for this Pistons team that's not stacked, that doesn't have a legitimate secondary shot creator and scorer, you could argue, even though he'll still need more years doing it, but you could argue he's the second greatest Piston of all time, behind Isaiah Thomas. I know it's crazy to say, but when you look at his talent and what he's able to do and his skill set, you could argue he's the second greatest Piston of all time, behind Isaiah Thomas. And he'll still have many more years to add to his resume. That's what's scary. And he wants to be great. And I think this reframes how we view Cade Cunningham and his place in the NBA hierarchy. The Pistons, 2 years ago, were a laughingstock. They almost broke the record for a losing streak in NBA history. They were a laughingstock. And then last year, they make the playoffs. They make some noise against the Knicks, force them into, 6 games? And then this year, they elevate into another level. Nobody saw them becoming the best team in the East. That's a kudos to Cade Cunningham. So I think that's what a championship would do for his legacy and for his reputation. It can only help him. Even if they get to the conference finals and he has a dominant playoff showing throughout this postseason, it will help him tremendously. To me, he's one of the top 10 best players in the league right now. Arguably top 7. And he's only going to get better because his game is not predicated on athleticism. It's based on skill and IQ. So that's something we gotta mention. The next guy I didn't really write it down, but Spider Mitchell, Donovan Mitchell, the Cleveland Cavaliers, James Harden. Donovan Mitchell, over the years, has been one of the best playoff performers we've seen in the modern era. He has come up big in the playoffs throughout the course of his career. I know people like to say, he's come up short. He's never been out the second round, which is true. But remember, last year, the Cavaliers had some injuries. Darius Garland had the toe issue. Evan Mobley missed some of that matchup against the Pacers last year with the injury that he had. He's had to carry the mantle for this Cavaliers team throughout the course of his career and tenure there, where he hasn't really had a legitimate secondary scorer that can get you consistently over 20 to 22 a game. Darius Garland, yes, he can get you maybe 18, 19, maybe 20. But for the majority, he's not really a consistent 20, 22 plus per game scorer. And you kind of need that in the postseason. Donovan Mitchell, if he were to get the Cavs, because they have not been to the NBA Finals since a decade ago. Well, 2018, excuse me. But they haven't won it in a decade. When LeBron and Kyrie and Kevin Love led that 3-1 comeback against the historic 73-9 Warriors. If he were to get the Cavs to the NBA Finals again, and they can, I think the Cavs are my dark horse to come out the East. I have the Celtics as my favorites and the Knicks maybe the second favorite. But you could argue the Cavs should be the second favorite. If he can get the best out of Evan Mobley and Jared Allen, I think that's really James Harden's job as the playmaker. We're going to get to him soon, but if Donovan Mitchell were able to lead this team to a deep playoff run, conference finals, NBA finals, and hypothetically were to win it, I think that gets rid of the bad stench that people have about him not being able to get out the second round. Is he really that guy? I think this solidifies his legacy as one of the 10 greatest shooting guards of all time. I think that's what's missing from his resume to elevate into that conversation. He has a chance to be one of the 10 greatest shooting guards of all time if he can start making more deep playoff runs and at least get a title to his name. Because at that tail end of the top 10 shooting guards of all time, the names will probably be George Gervin, Reggie Miller, Ray Allen, Manu Ginobili maybe. Because shooting guard historically, I think outside like the top 3 kind of drops off a little bit. And then you have the next tier where you have Jerry West. You have James Harden. You have Allen Iverson. And then there's another little drop off. You have T-Mac in there, Vince Carter maybe at the tail end. But they didn't really have much playoff success. Donovan Mitchell's had more playoff success than them. But I think that's a conversation. He needs to make the conference finals. He's been a perennial All-NBA guy now. The time has come for him to elevate his team, and I know he feels the pressure. And then James Harden. You've had many playoff no-shows throughout your career. You've had many games where you had more turnovers than points, and more turnovers than field goals, in games throughout your career. If you can elevate, you are the missing piece. Because I was watching that Cavs game against the Raptors and how he was able to break down the defense. It's something they were missing outside of Donovan Mitchell. When you're the initiator and playmaker, Mitchell could just focus on his scoring. That's what his main strength is. When he has an elite rim rolling big man, which he has at his disposal now with Evan Mobley and Jared Allen, you can maximize those guys, which he did because they were getting to the rim, getting easy lobs, being aggressive. If he can get the most out of those guys and maximize them and have them playing aggressive offensively, the Cavs have a legitimate chance to upset and make some noise in Eastern Conference Finals this year. They can make a push to Eastern Conference Finals because if they beat who they play in the Raptors the first round, they will play the winner of the Pistons, Magic. To me, they're a better team than those teams, talent-wise. If he can really get the best out of Mobley offensively and Jared Allen, because I love how aggressive they were attacking the rim yesterday, then this Cavs team can shock a lot of people. But they need to do it consistently. And if James Harden were able to get the Cavs to the finals, maybe potentially win a ring, or even make a Eastern Conference Finals run and have some big games and pressure moments, I think that will get rid of the narrative around him. I don't know. Only a championship could completely get rid of the narrative around him that he doesn't come up in big games or he can't do it in pressure moments. I think only a championship would erase all that. But if he can help them get to the finals and win, I think this will put him in a different conversation. I don't think he'll be over D-Wade all the time. A lot of people like to say he's already over D-Wade all the time. I don't even think one ring does it because D-Wade did it as the guy. But him doing it as like a second fiddle behind Mitchell, I think that will help him in his legacy because people usually have James Harden around the top 30, 35 all time. If he's able to win a ring, he's maybe in that late 20s, early 30s range. Maybe you could potentially say he's in the mid-20s if he were to win a championship and show up in big moments. But yeah, that's something I wanted to mention because he has to be in this conversation. And then this icing on the cake, I have LeBron James, man. Oh, excuse me. Before we get to LeBron, excuse me, my throat. Kind of losing it here, under the weather, but Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns. I'll make this quick. If you guys were to win a title for the Knicks, you guys made the conference finals for the first time last year in a quarter century. You guys haven't been to the finals since 1999. It's been over a quarter century since you made the finals. And it's been over 50 years since you won the finals. You guys were so close to make it to the finals last year. If you're able to get there and win it, you cement yourselves amongst New York sports lore. You guys are the kings of New York. You guys won a title. You guys will be mentioned amongst the streets of New York City forever. Because if you're able to win a title for one of the big markets as the guy or one of the top two guys on a New York team, LA, Boston, Chicago, big markets, you're entrenched forever. You're talked about like a god if you're able to do that. And Knicks fans and New York fans, y'all know. And as any Rangers star that's won a Stanley Cup, a Yankees star player that won a World Series, or New York Giants that's won a Super Bowl, you're respected forever. There's nothing that people could say or haters could say because you have that ring on your finger. So if you guys are able to do that, nobody can ever say you guys never show up in big moments. Nobody can ever say, oh, you can't get it done with two offensive guys who are not really known as defenders. And this Knicks team, I think they have the personnel to get it done. It all comes down to, I'm not worried about Brunson. Defensively, yes, because some matchups I think you can exploit him, like with the Celtics and maybe the Cavs. Cat, if he plays aggressive on both ends, he is the key factor. And then Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby, you have some wings who could defend and make up for their weaknesses defensively and who can knock down threes. I think that's something that if they can do, those guys do their job. And then they have some guys off the bench, Jordan Clarkson, Miles McBride, Mitchell Robinson with his defensive activity, rim protection. Landry Shamet knocks down shots and does what he has to do. Josh Hart, an elite rebounding, starting guard, one of the best I've seen in NBA. They have a chance to get to conference finals again and maybe the NBA finals. I think the East comes down really to the Celtics, the Knicks, and the Cavs. The Pistons, I know they're number one seed, but they just don't have that secondary elite shot creator that I'm worried about outside of Cade. That's what's holding them back. So, yeah, I think another a ring for Brunson and Cat. And it'll get rid of that stigma off Cat that he's not a playoff shower, that he's not a guy who rises during the postseason. Brunson has already proven that he shows up in big games. But I think it'll get rid of that stigma that you can't win with these two guys as your 1 and 2 due to their defensive liabilities. I think they'll get rid of that. Because as long as you build some defensive wings around them, guys who can knock down shots too, you could win with those guys. And we've seen them make a deep playoff run just last season. So I think if they can just get over that hurdle and get to the finals, yeah, I think that'll etch them into a different conversation. And then icing on the cake, man. LeBron James, if he were to win as a third option, a title in year 22, you'll be I don't know if you'll win Finals MVP because Luka Doncic is there. But if you say he were to win it, it'd be the oldest Finals MVP ever. 5 rings across multiple eras and different styles of play. I think this will strengthen his GOAT case because his adaptability to be able to put his ego aside and say, Luka, Austin Reeves, this is your team. I'm just here in the background when you guys need me. And then if you need me to be aggressive or to be the initiator. His longevity, the sacrifices he's made for winning. For someone who's in the GOAT conversation, to be able to put your ego aside and say, I'll be the third option, that speaks volumes to you as a player. LeBron James is arguably the greatest player of all time. How many guys of his caliber, his level, still playing at the level he's at this late into his career, are willing to say, I'll be the third option for the betterment of the team? Because nobody's been great this late into their career other than LeBron. And his IQ for the game is second to none. This will just be the icing on the cake. This will be the final chapter of the evolution of one of the greatest careers, not just in NBA history, but in sports history. And this will be a fairy tale ending. We don't know if this is his last season or next season is, but this will only put more respect on the name LeBron James. So that's what I wanted to say. And then one last guy I wanted to mention, Kevin Durant. People talk about your rings being cheap in Golden State. If you were to somehow win a title with Houston Rockets, very unlikely. But if you were to come back from your knee injury, win a title, that shuts down all the negative talk about you can't do it as the lead guy. That propels you into top 10 conversations. I don't know if I don't think I'll have him in my top 10 because he still only has one MVP and he never was an all defensive guy. But he's starting to get in those talks if he were to lead Houston to a title. Because that's the biggest knock against Kevin Durant, am I right? He's a great, talented player, great scorer, One of the greatest talents we've ever seen. Unstoppable as a scorer from 3 levels. One of the best offensive players we've ever seen. But is he a true leader? That's always been the question with Kevin Durant. Is he a leader that can galvanize the troops and lead a team to a deep playoff run and a title? That's what we have to ask, especially without a loaded squad around him. That will change the narrative on his career forever and show that he could get it done without Steph, without a loaded cast around him. And I think he needs it for his career. When we talk about his legacy when he's retired for the next couple of decades, forever, I think he needs that title to help the narrative around his legacy. So, yeah, that's my list. Those are some of the players I think who have the most to gain from an NBA championship or deep playoff run this year, because every year we see players help and elevate their legacies, or those who succumb to the pressure and kind of hurt their reputation or viewing amongst the greats due to their playoff performances. And that's what I love about the playoffs, man. It shows who are the playoff risers and who falls in the playoffs. So, yeah, ladies and gentlemen, those are some of my playoff guys who have most to gain from the playoffs and a potential championship for their respective organizations and what it will do for their legacies. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. Who has the most to gain? Who has the most to lose as well? Because if some of these guys come up short in the postseason, or their team fail to meet expectations or losing the championship, how do you think it will hurt them as well? So let me know in the conversation who you think has the most to gain and lose in this postseason. I'm your host, DJ Hamilton with DJ Sports Show. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, and we'll see y'all next time. Peace.